Okay, last time we ended with we were in the middle of the tshuvas from Rav Harfinis on Hilchos Shabbos, and sorry about that. And we ended with this tshuva over here. I just wanted to reassess what we did and clarify something that might have I might have said incorrectly. We left off with this tshuva in particular with the arrow, tshuva kuf chavav. This is talking about at the end of Siman Kuf Chav Daled. It's talking about that if a person is married, he has to help his wife with preparing the house. But the key line over here is right over here. Even if it's not Erev Shabbos, or even if you already finished all the preparations of Shabbos. So he's putting this in tangentially at the end of this tshuva to point something out, which is the concept of helping your wife. Because he says a chiddush, Mishum mitzvahs azov ta'azov imo. It's a general mitzvah that the Torah discusses, according to many poskim, knowing mitzvahs prika vitina gam adam. There's a mitzvah that the Torah talks about before they had cars, which is people would travel by horses. Actually, in certain places, they still use horses, believe it or not. You don't need to spend money on gas on that, or
You gotta
electricity,
feed, you
or
gotta feed the
electricity.
horse. You gotta feed the horse,
Got to feed the horse, true, but it's
which probably costs more than gas.
maybe I
Gas
don't
isn't
know.
so cheap.
I don't
Gas
know.
isn't so price.
I don't know. The point is that
No, actually, that would cost
if
more.
there's a load that's on the horse, how many pounds could a horse hold? So if the load is too big, you're helping your friend load up the animal, you're going away, you're traveling, you're going by horse, and also there's a mitzvah to help unload. So that also applies with people, because it's a mitzvah of chesed. And he says, Mishum, mitzvah gnos chesed, Mishum lav delo, tir b'vav b'parach vo, deino baro gidri chiyuv, his askus b'sarchi abayis u'mitelas alisha. When it comes to the obligations of a woman, of a wife, so it's not necessarily so clear exactly what she's obligated in addition to, for sure, a woman's obligated, he says in parentheses, ma'afio, bishul, arbichas hashulchan, hatzas, amita v'kedoima. For sure, a wife is obligated with baking, cooking, making the bed, setting the table, for sure. But the question is everything in addition to that. So it's not so clear that there would be a full-fledged obligation. Kigon nikayon habayis v'chulu. For example, general cleaning of the house, which frankly takes a tremendous amount of time and energy. In other words, these specific items, yes. Everything else, it's not so simple. So therefore, if it's not going to get done, imkein sarchi habayis mutalun gam alav kamo kamosa. If it's not going to get done, then he would be obligated to assist. Nothing to do with Shabbos, just in general. Now, obviously, if a person has cleaning help, so then, they're paying for that to get done, and then he doesn't need to do that. But if not, so then he would. So that's the tangential point that I just wanted to clarify that I thought was important. Let's continue now with the Tshuva Kuf Chavav. What type of preparatory act should a person be involved with? Preferably, halachically. There are dozens of different preparatory actions and preparations that a person needs to be involved with on Erev Shabbos. The question is, are certain preparations more halachically preferable to be involved with, or not? Are we going to say that no, that it's one size fits all, everything's equal? Kol adam b'machal shechaved alav b'yoser. The best thing for a person to do is be involved specifically with food preparations that he enjoys, that he's into. Midivrei Shulchan Aruch Harav b'kunchas achron yotzei, sheyesh yitroin chashivos sheyis asik behachanos hamachal shemis aneg mimenu b'yoser. The words of the Shulchan Aruch Harav and the Kuntres Achron, it's clear that there is a halachic benefit for a person to be involved with food preparations that he will enjoy the most. In other words, if the guy's a meat type of guy and he enjoys being involved with the preparations of the meat, then let him grill. Let him be involved with the meat. That's what's implied from the Gemara when it says that Rav Safra was machid, Rava was malach shibusa. In other words, each of those rabbis were involved with activities that they enjoyed, from. And there were many tzaddikim who had the custom to prepare the fish themselves. Why? Because they liked the fish. In other words, be involved with something that you enjoy.
Doctor the fish?
No, that's exactly the point of this. They enjoyed fish a lot, so therefore they were involved with the fish.
What about
But
the
us,
chillum?
we don't like fish. We shouldn't be involved with the fish. We could be involved with something else. Yeah, whatever it is.
I think chillum's more of a a guy's food, right?
Yeah, it depends on the person, but yeah, maybe, perhaps you could say that.
Hmm.
Here's a truth over here. If a bacher in yeshiva, is he obligated to help with the preparations of Shabbos, or should he continue learning? So what would be a difference between a bacher and someone married?
Shalom bias.
Okay, shalom bias. But he says over here, a bacher doesn't have to do anything because he's eating by other people's houses. He's eating in yeshiva. He doesn't need to do vas. He doesn't need to do anything. Right? So maybe he wouldn't be obligated. In other words, maybe the preparations of Shabbos are only placed upon someone that has to prepare Shabbos. But this guy who doesn't need to prepare will be prepared anyways. So then he doesn't need to do anything. However, he says, miyois toiv shagam bachurim yasayu ksas bebayis lazakos b'mitzvah chashuva zo. However, it's really correct that a bacher should help ksas a little bit in his house to merit this important mitzvah. Va'im taniach eze dvarim ketanim. The baneh shisasku mother should be careful. You have a bacher, let's say, living at home, to leave for his child, to his son, to at least do a little something for Shabbos. One should educate ketanim that reach the age of chinuch on this as well. What about avreichim achar nisuayim shein oichlim bebeisim? Let's say you have a young couple who just got married. They're not eating at their house. They're going out for Shabbos. How do they prepare for Shabbos? The answer is yikne is a machal pri or mashkal Shabbos. Just buy something. Buy a little fruit. He says, buy a candy platter from where you're going. Buy something. A dessert platter. Make a dessert platter. Make some mazonos, whatever it is, or a drink. B'diavad sagim mash bal yochanas aneir shel Shabbos va'yishem adlik. And b'diavad says a chiddush. If the husband prepares the neiros for his wife, and his wife lights them, that would be halachically considered preparing for Shabbos, which is a massive chiddush. It's not such a chiddush that if the man prepares the neiros, then it will be halachically considered a preparation for Shabbos. What the chiddush is that if she would light the neiros, that would be considered preparing for Shabbos. How on earth is her performing a mitzvah of lighting the neiros considered hachana Shabbos? Sarachian on that one. But the idea is to at least do something, right? I think we learned about it in the past. I think it was in Siman Reis Hamach Beis, maybe, that if someone is going away for Shabbos, so even maybe to do something in preparation of Shabbos for the house. Make something a little neater, whatever it is. Same idea over here. Just tidy something up for Shabbos. Say I'm doing the couple Shabbos Kodesh. It's a very important shaila that is asked. Now we're going to get to the meat and the potatoes. Is there an obligation or a mitzvah on Shabbos to specifically eat meat? Is there an inyan? Is there an idea of eating specifically meat, actual meat, not chicken meat? Or it's enough to have other types of food that you enjoy? Basar. אבל אין מצווה מיוחד על כך, וממילא שאין מצווה להשתדל לאכול בשר בהמה. Someone who gets pleasure from eating meat should eat meat. However, however, there is no specific mitzvah on this. In other words, if you like eating meat, you should eat meat. But there's no special mitzvah here. You have a mitzvah to eat meat. Therefore, there's no mitzvah to strive to eat meat. In other words, you should eat meat, but it's not necessarily a mitzvah. What's the source of this? The answer is our Siman Reish Nun in the Shulchan Aruch Sif Beis. The Shulchan Aruch says, Yarba ha'adam bebasar v'yayin u'megdanos kefi yachalasa. That a person should increase the amount of meat and wine and delicacies, items that he's able to purchase before Shabbos according to his abilities, financial ability, so he can eat it on Shabbos. Yesh layin. Im yesh kapida davka b'achilas basar. So you have to eat specifically meat or anything that you enjoy. So, for example, if you like salmon, stick with your salmon. Maybe the Shulchan Aruch was saying no, get basar and yayin, because most people they enjoy basar and yayin. They enjoy the meat and the wine. But the truth is, if you enjoy eating other types of food, so then you should in fact be eating other types of food, like a mitzvah and there wouldn't be a mitzvah to specifically eat meat. In other words, how could we explain the Shulchan Aruch when he says Yarba Adam Babasar V'Yayin? Is that saying a din that's miyuchad? Is that a halacha that specifically and exclusively applies to meat and wine, to the exclusion of everything else? Or is that no, it's lav dafka, not specifically those items, however, it's just that the norm is for people to eat those items? It says in your day in Hilchas Avelus, in Siman Shin Mem Aleph Sif Aleph, an onein on Shabbos and Yontif could eat basar and drink yayin. Im if he wants. So it's implied from there that if he doesn't want to eat meat, then he doesn't have to. So the Shach writes over there in Sivkot and Vav from the Talmidei Rabbeinu Yoina on Maseches Brachos in the beginning of the third parak of Misha Meso. It's implied over there. The reason is there's no obligation, says the Rabbeinu Yoina, to eat meat, v'yishte yayin b'Shabbos, and drink wine on Shabbos. When we're going to learn some in Reish Mem Beis, we're going to learn the halacha of a person should make his Shabbos weekday style and don't go and ask, don't need people. In other words, if a person could either have a lavish and luxurious food on Shabbos, but he will need to knock on the door to ask for charity from people, the halacha is no, eat simple food on Shabbos and don't ask other people, don't ask for charity. We're going to learn about that more. Hilchach nihi de bedavar shehu mitzvah chayiv la'asoisa b'Shabbos. Therefore, even though that's something that's a mitzvah, he's going to be obligated to do on Shabbos. Aval ze reshuso im yirtza yochel basar v'yishtayayim. But over here, this is optional. If he wants, he could eat basar and drink yayin. In other words, we see from this halacha, says the Rabbeinu Yoina, not to knock on people's doors and to have a very simple Shabbos, that there's no full-fledged obligation to eat the meat and drink the yayin on Shabbos. Because you should make your Shabbos weekday-like in terms of the lavishness. So therefore, even though something that would be a mitzvah you'd be obligated to do on Shabbos, this is optional. If you want, you have meat and drink wine. If you don't want, then you don't have to. That is Ad Kan Lashon of the Talmid Rabbeinu Yoina. We see from this Talmid Rabbeinu Yoina, that if you would have the intention that you're doing it for the sake of a mitzvah, and you would be eating the basar and drinking the yain, you would in fact fulfill a mitzvah. And even according to the poskim that on Yontif they say that there's an obligation or a mitzvah to eat meat, you could say no, Yontif is different. Because Yontif, there's a specific mitzvah of simcha, of being happy. As the pasuk says, v'samachta b'chagecha. Unlike Shabbos, it doesn't say simcha, it says only. So therefore, anything that a person gets a physical pleasure from consuming, he would fulfill the mitzvah for having that on Shabbos. It doesn't have to specifically and exclusively be meat. At the end, he quotes the Shal Teshuvas Beis David in Siman Shin Chav Daled, who says we don't find in any sefer that it says that there's an obligation, a full-fledged obligation to eat meat. Tshuva continues. It's a lengthy tshuva over here. It's an interesting Taz in your day. He talks about by chatzitza, bring a raya maybe of eating meat before. Magen Avraham and Simon Tovkuf Ayin Beis Sifkat and Hay says also you don't need to eat meat on Shabbos. Shal Shuvas Halachas Ketanos, that's Rabbi Menashe Klein. Chelik Aleph Simon Sadi Aleph says that there's not an obligation to eat meat or drink wine on Shabbos. Also the Piskei Tshuva in your day at the end of Simon Yurches. Also it's brought in the Shulchan Aruch Simon Reish Ben Beis of Beis. Mitzvah Hashem, we're going to learn that Simon next. There would not be an obligation to eat meat and drink wine on a Shabbos. However, since most people they get a tremendous amount of pleasure from it, so therefore they should have meat and wine according to their financial ability. The next tshuva, Amir Hashem, we're going to resume with next time, is going to be dealing with a concept. Let's say you yourself get a tremendous amount of pleasure from eating cholent or fish, and that's your favorite food. So let's say there's a kiddush in shul and you eat at the kiddush cholent or fish, which remember is your favorite food. Should a person still eat cholent at their suda afterwards at home or fish? Because remember, this is your favorite food. And therefore, since the cholent and the fish is your favorite food, should you specifically have it during your Suda? Because remember, halachically, the Suda of the day is supposed to be the most lavish Suda out of everything. The Suda during the day, not the Suda at the night. So should you make sure that you have it specifically in the Suda? We say no. Lamaisa, you had the cholent, you had the fish. Granted, albeit it wasn't during the Suda, but nevertheless, you had it on Shabbos, so you already had the Oneg Shabbos. In other words, is the concept of Oneg Shabbos, is that just no, that you should get pleasure from consuming your favorite foods on Shabbos, your favorite food items, or no, you should consume it, but not just consume it stamazo in the middle of nowhere. Rather, it should be consumed during the actual Suda. So Mitzvah Hashem, next week, we're going to start with that shayla. Everyone should have a wonderful Shabbos. Bruchim Til Mitzvah Hashem, Imam Shech, Monday, 9:15.
It's Hashem. All right, take care, everybody.
All right, have a good job.
David, what's the matter?
No, I didn't see anything.